Hey, do you want to build a stronger family, create a better life? Well, that's what Divorce with Heart is all about. It's a show where I guide you along your divorce and co-parenting journey using the heart's wisdom, intuition, and legal expertise. So sit back, take a deep breath, relax. My name is Gina DiPrima. Let's get started. Hey, hello everybody. It's Labor Day, so happy Labor Day. I hope you're all enjoying the day and taking some time off to relax and have some fun in your life, no matter where you are in your marriage or divorce journey. Remember, there's always time and always room to make time for something fun and enjoyable. And if you're not doing it, then maybe go back to that self-love episode where we talked about that quite a bit, because it's so important, especially when you're experiencing such deep levels of pain and heartache and anger and, all the stress and overwhelm really that just comes with the territory of a broken heart. In order to start feeling better, you've got to sort of elevate your vibe there somehow. So even if it's just something small that you enjoy doing, or remember that you used to enjoy doing, like taking your dog for a walk at night, or going to a park, sitting on the swings, going to a yoga class, going to gym, something like that. Get yourself a massage, anything at all where you can just experience that glimpse of life and that moment where, life is easy and it's okay. Because everybody needs that reminder every now and again, especially when you're feeling so hurt and down. And then as you do that, your body can sort of have a place that it will also remember from a physical sense and a vibrational sense, someplace where it can then go back to and begin to match up with, instead of always feeling so down and in despair. So today, wow, that was a long little lingering intro. Today is Labor Day, and this is not a live episode. It's a pre-record episode, actually, because I, too, hopefully, while you're listening, am doing something, crazy and fun and not work-related. So, episode 20, we are going to talk today about some of the things that your lawyer knows and isn't telling you, or maybe doesn't want you to know. And just, in general, I'm not speaking certainly of all lawyers. I could never possibly know all lawyers. But this is just kind of my general opinion, general impression. And, there's always some people on the fringe or on the sidelines that aren't going to fit into these general categories of what I'm talking about. Okay, so how's that for a disclaimer? But that being said, and as a practicing lawyer, I've been practicing law now for, in one way or another, I'd say about 20 years, I think I'm going on. I was admitted to the bar in 2004, but even prior to that, I was working with lawyers in the legal field. So I've been involved in this area for a very, very long time, and almost exclusively dealing with families and matters of the heart, emotional matters. So in that experience, of course, I've come to understand myself and my way of being and my way of relating to my own clients. But, I've dealt with so many attorneys. I couldn't even put an estimate on the number for you. So many cases. And, just like anything, you start to get a feel for the people and the personalities and just how things kind of work and what the flow is, right? Just like I'm sure in your work environment, who's easier to deal with, who's easy to negotiate with, who to avoid, because they're kind of a jerk, the person's style. Well, I too have come to realize the individual styles of many different kinds of attorneys. And so based on that is kind of where I'm drawing out some of these generalities and the principles that I'm going to talk to you about today. So These aren't really in any particular order, just some thoughts that came to mind. But the first thing that I want to talk to you about that your lawyer knows and may or may not tell you is that being reasonable in your legal position is not a bad thing. Your lawyer knows this because, first of all, when you're not taking a reasonable position and you're, for an example, going forward with your divorce with this idea of retribution and punishing your ex and wanting to get even or shame him in front of everybody or her, right? And because of that level of anger, you take positions that just don't necessarily make legal sense. Particularly, I see this in the area of kids and trying to restrict another parent's, really their ability to have a relationship with their children. And you start to take positions where you're really trying to manage the other side and their time with the child. You start to take positions where you say like maybe there should be supervised access or maybe no access at all. I mean, for the most part, depending on what your situation is, of course, this is probably not likely to be a very reasonable course of action. It's not likely to be something very reasonable on your part because the reality is that, all parents have a right to have a relationship with their children. Even parents that are incarcerated, that does not terminate parental rights. So since your rights are not terminated, you have a right to have a relationship with your children, and your children have a right to have a relationship with that parent. So, when you let emotions get in the way and it clouds your judgment, so to speak, and you start to take these positions that are more or less not reasonable, it's not helpful to your case. And your attorney knows that, but your attorney may not be telling you that because dun, 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 you're paying your attorney hourly. So think about it. The more drama there is in your divorce case, in your custody dispute, in your spousal support claim or child support claim, the more drama there is, the more problems there are, the more upset you are, then the more money your attorney is going to make. Okay? So some attorneys will say, well, they're not going to say it because they're not going to tell you, but, they may not tell you, listen, this position that you're taking on this issue is not likely to be productive. You're likely to spend a lot of money and be spinning your wheels and get nowhere in terms of your goal or desired outcome. And they're not going to tell you that because at the end of the day, they know that your retainer is dwindling down with every minute that they're talking to you. And if that means going to a full trial to settle some drama that's created, or because you want retribution over your spouse and, you want to prove all of these things that happened during the marriage, and until you get your moment and opportunity to do that, you're just not willing to agree to anything, your attorney's going to say, okay, because they're going to turn around and give you a trial retainer. And a trial retainer is not cheap. And by the time you're there, if it works anything like it does over where I am, by the time you're even at that stage in the proceedings to be even talking about a trial, you've likely already exhausted your first retainer that you paid, maybe even a second retainer. Now you're looking at a trial, and a trial retainer could easily start at $10,000. So is there a reason for your attorney to tell you, look, maybe you should reconsider your position here? Maybe you should be a little more agreeable or open to this possibility or this opportunity for settlement? Yeah, your attorney should absolutely tell you that. And some attorneys do. Some attorneys absolutely will tell you that. And the reason why they'll tell you that is because their interest first, above the money, their interest first is to help you and to help your family and to help you move through this process and transition into the next part of your life. There are attorneys out there. I am one of those attorneys. I know many attorneys who would also advise their clients accordingly. But at the same time, I know many attorneys who would not, because when they have an unreasonable over dramatic, over emotional client, that just means, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. You need a trial. You need me to file all these, fancy motion papers and make formal applications to the judge to solve every dispute. And that's okay if you want to do that, because I'm going to charge you for it. So there's very, very good reason to be reasonable. And if you vetted your attorney the right way in the beginning, then hopefully you've lined yourself up with an attorney who is going to place your interests and your future as the primary goal or the primary outcome versus just maybe appealing to your immediate heartache and emotions. So when you're vetting your attorney, you want to make sure that you have an attorney that you're hiring that's going to be willing to tell you, look, I understand how you feel about this. I understand your anger. I understand what happened, but that's not the law, or we're not going to win at trial on that, or we don't have any evidence to support that. Basically, the big but I get you, but it's not reasonable. And if it's not reasonable, then you're going to spend a lot more money than what you probably need to and be a lot more miserable in the end. So something important to consider when you're vetting your attorney is, make sure that they seem to be somebody who is really focused on the overall outcome and helping to kind of guide you and transition you through this major stage in your life. Because I mean, your whole life will change. So it has to be somebody that you can trust and talk to. And speaking of talking to, here's something else that your attorney may or may not tell you is tell us the truth. Tell your attorney the truth. The good, the bad, the ugly, everything, no matter how embarrassing you think it might be, or even just how silly or how remote you think it might be, because you don't necessarily know all of the ins and outs and the things that we as your attorney need to know or need to consider in order to advance your case. And there is absolutely nothing worse than showing up in court and for the first time ever standing there next to your client and hearing some damaging story. And that has happened to me. I'm sure that's happened to many lawyers out there because, people are afraid and they minimize the truth, or they rationalize it. Oh, I don't have to tell him. I don't have to tell her because blah, 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 X, Y, Z. Tell your lawyer the truth, no matter what it is. We have some lawyers, I being one of them, I will agree with this. There's this little saying that we kind of talk about, and that's, in criminal law, that's where you see bad people who are behaving well. And I used to actually practice some criminal law in the early stages of my life. And I enjoyed it because, my criminal defendants just wanted me to get them the best deal. And they had this ability to be more reasonable, believe it or not. So as part of this little, saying or cliche that in criminal law, we see bad people who are behaving well. In family law and divorce law, we see good people who are behaving very poorly. They're at their worst. And I mean, there's nothing more true than that. And that's because of the intensity of the emotions, because it's a roller coaster ride, right? And you don't know what to expect. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. So there's a whole heck of a lot of fear that's underlying everything that you're likely experiencing when you're going through it. So just keep that in mind, that your lawyer knows that. And we expect that you are going to please tell us the truth, no matter what your judgment is of the truth, of whether it's necessary or not necessary. It's important because nobody wants to be sandbagged. And that's the only way that we can represent you, and represent you well is if we know everything that there is to know about it. Okay. Now, of course, that has to be balanced with another point that I wanted to talk to you about, was the cost factor again. Everything that your lawyer does is going to be costing you money. Everything. Okay? And usually to hire a lawyer, you're going to sign a retainer agreement. And usually that's just your initial retainer, just something that you can use to get your lawyer started on the case. Usually most cases will require a supplemental retainer and maybe even a trial retainer, depending, right? So look at that retainer closely. Look at how you are being billed, because most lawyers charge hourly fees. And I know that there's this growing movement to do flat fees, but I'm cautious of that. I'm very cautious of that because especially in the area of family and divorce law, because there's so many twists and turns and things that can happen unexpectedly that I think a flat fee divorce could be very dangerous for both the client and the lawyer. So I still think most lawyers are charging hourly, and you need to look at that and look at, are they billing by the 10th of the hour, which would be, everything's rounded up by 6 minutes, or is it something different, like a quarter of the hour? Are you going to talk to your lawyer for a minute and be billed for 15? And this is very important. Going back to when I said, make sure you're telling your lawyer the truth. Yes, you need to communicate with your lawyer. Absolutely. You need to communicate with your lawyer if you want effective representation. But that does not mean that you need to call your lawyer's office every day just for a status report. What's happening with the papers? I know they were submitted to the judge. What's happening? Every day checking in. Because every day you're doing that, sending that email, making that phone call, sending that text, you're likely being billed. And, little side note, you're probably annoying your lawyer just a little bit, because hopefully you've hired somebody that you trust that's going to work for you in your best interests. And your lawyer needs to know also that you're relying on them and you're trusting in them. And by trying to sort of micromanage them by checking in every day when, you've already hopefully established this relationship with your lawyer where they're going to keep you advised of any changes and new outcomes, it's kind of annoying. Okay, so you're going to not want to do that. It's going to cost you too much money, and it's probably going to irritate your lawyer. That being said, hopefully you've hired a lawyer that has explained to you, or it's probably in the retainer agreement, that you do have a right to know what's going on in your case and to have regular updates. So rely on your lawyer and trust your lawyer to give you that. If papers were submitted to the court, trust that your lawyer will let you know as soon as they are available to be picked up and given to you, or that a copy will automatically be circulated to. Don't waste your time, don't waste your energy, and don't waste your money calling every day, asking like the same kinds of questions or for status updates. Now, if you haven't heard from your lawyer and months have gone by, that's a different issue. Then call and check on the status. But don't get into this game of trying to micromanage your lawyer. It's a lose-lose for sure, okay? And when you are communicating, again, are you communicating something of value and of reason? Is it reasonable for you to be communicating whatever it is to your lawyer? All right. What I mean here is this. Yes, you want to pick a lawyer that is going to be very supportive of you, who has the ability to really listen to you and to be compassionate for you and to fight as hard as they can to secure, the end of your marriage and the brightest future possible, right? But they're not your therapist and they're not your trained counselor. And again, this is such an emotional thing for everybody to experience. Even people who made the decision to make the split, it's still emotional. Okay. So you don't have to communicate all of every little detail of every little thing, I guess, to your lawyer. Save kind of the emotional stuff. If you need help processing something emotionally or how you're feeling about something, save that for your counselor. Save that for your coach. Or if your lawyer is also working with you as a coach, save it for the time that's designated for that. Okay? Because you're going to get a better outcome anyways, and it won't cost you as much. Okay? What else did I want to say about that? Oh, okay. Here's something else that comes up a lot in terms of communication. You, especially if you have kids, you might have the sense that it's important for you to document whatever is happening while your case is pending. Like a diary or a log that you're keeping of all of the access that you have with your children, all of the access that your spouse has, the communication you're having between the two of you, important events that are happening between the two of you, or non-events, just kind of this log. It's not uncommon for attorneys to ask clients to keep something like this, okay? That being said, it does not at all mean please email your attorney, please email me every single day, right, with the rundown and the summary of what happened that day. Again, that is just going to run up your legal bill, and it's going to cost you too much. Gather the information. Do exactly as your attorney is suggesting. In fact, maybe even have that conversation with your attorney and say, how often do you want me to keep you apprised of what's going on? Do you want me to send it to you weekly? Do you want me just to bring it with me whenever we meet in person? Have that conversation, because the regular updates or the emails for the purpose of, quote unquote, I just wanted to document this. I've heard that a lot, where clients send me things just because they want it to be, quote unquote, documented. It's not necessary. Again, it's just a waste of your retainer. And it needs to happen, but it needs to be documented for your purposes. And it needs to be documented for your purposes down the line in terms of whether we're going to trial, having a hearing, having motions, what have you, whatever the case may be. Okay, it's not that your attorney needs to have a play-by-play in real-time order of what's going on. Okay, so have that talk also with your lawyer. Let's see, mediation. Now, some lawyers are mediation friendly, and some lawyers are not. So I think, especially if you are listening to this program and you've enjoyed my philosophy and where I come from and how I see divorce as, the dissolution of the marriage, but not of the family, you're going to want to pick a lawyer to represent you that's mediation friendly or trained in collaborative law, because those kinds of lawyers are the lawyers that you're more likely to find are going to have a shared similar mindset to what I speak of here on this program. Okay. You don't need the lawyer that is against mediation and just completely aggressive and wants to, make a mountain out of a molehill on every issue, because although that might make you feel real good, remember, cha-ching, cha-ching, they are not there to be your therapist. You need to get a separate therapist or a coach. And in the end, I'll tell you, first of all, nobody really is ever happy at the end of a divorce or custody dispute. Okay. It's just, how unhappy are you going to be? It's more of a question of that. Or who are both sides equally miserable, right? We kind of present it like that because nobody's, quote unquote, happy, right? So when you're looking for your lawyers, go for the ones who are at least mediation friendly. They understand it. They get it. They may even practice mediation themselves. Same with collaborative law. Otherwise, you'll be hiring somebody that you've heard is a bulldog, or you've heard this person's a shark, right? And what's going to happen is in about 3 months flat, you would have went through $30,000, had a lot of fancy paperwork prepared for you and submitted to the court, and have been really, at the end of the day, no further along or barely any further along in terms of reaching the solution that you wanted. So again, the lawyer who is not probably mediation friendly or collaboratively trained is going to be more on that side of, are you unreasonable? Then you're a great client for me, because the more unreasonable you are, the more emotional you are, the more broken you are, the more that's going to cost you, i.e. the more I'm going to make to resolve your case. And that's not what you want. You want the lawyer that's going to obviously be mindful of the money, because nobody works for free, but it's not going to be top priority. It's not number one on the list. Okay. So think about that. Every little minor dispute that you have with your spouse, especially if you're living together while you're going through the process, again, it's not something you need to just document through your lawyer, let your lawyer know about all the time as it's happening, as a running playbook. Not necessary. Okay. Here's another thing that your lawyer may or may not tell you, but a good lawyer will. I want to know the facts. Present the facts. Present everything that you have in a very organized fashion. The more organized you can be, then the less it's going to cost you in the end in legal fees. So oftentimes what I'll do is I will present my clients with a list of documents that I need, and I will ask them to return them to me in a very organized fashion using a 3-ring notebook with subdividers labeled according to the list. It's a great way to do it. Anybody can do it. If your lawyer hasn't asked you to do that, then again, work that into your conversation with your lawyer. Ask them if they think that would be helpful to them. Okay. And what I'm talking about here is maybe you have a tab for mortgage statements. Maybe you've got several credit cards. So you've got a tab for your credit card statements, but then you're going to even further subdivide them by, your Chase, Visa, and your Home Depot credit cards. Maybe you've got some student loan debt or personal loans. Again, you get the idea here. You're going to put subdividers into your binder. If you've got your parenting calendar or your journal or whatever you're using to quote unquote document things, put that in there too. The more organized you can make your case, and the easier you can make it for your attorney to understand what you're presenting, then the more effective the representation is going to be. And of course, the more cost effective it will be. So keep that in mind. Make every communication that you have with your lawyer something very easy and simple for your lawyer to digest. So if it's documents, consider the binder method. If you're emailing, still consider this in your communications. Don't send out this it's like the stream of thought, this diary of the mouth type email where it begins at the top and it ends, a page or two later, and there's no spaces, there's no paragraphs. It's just blah, right? Don't do that, because I'll tell you what, lawyers are very, very busy people, and we are always on the go. Whether we're in court or going from one client meeting to the next or depositions or whatever the case may be, a lot of the time when we are reviewing your emails, we're reviewing them on our phone. So if you're used to reviewing emails on your phone, you know how it looks bad even when you're on a desktop opening an email like that. So now imagine it on your little smartphone, and you've got, a couple of minutes between court appearances or client meetings, and you're looking and you're trying to read it and understand it and digest it and respond. It doesn't work very well. So keep that in mind. If you want to send an email, maybe consider bulleted lists. Just keep it short, keep it simple and to the point, keep it easy to read, right? If you're talking about parenting schedules and things like that, I think it's just easier for everybody to understand things when it comes to parenting schedules if you can lay it out visually on a calendar. So it's so super simple and easy to go and get a blank Google Calendar and use that. And, use an M for mom's days, use a D for dad's days, use pink, use blue, use whatever you can to get your point across, again, in a very clear, simple manner. That's going to help you. It'll help the representation you receive. And like I said, all of this stuff is also kind of geared toward saving you money in the end. So we're about halfway through the program. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a few more points. So stay with me. Hey there, it's Gina. If you like what you hear, did you know that you can get even deeper and closer to your heart's wisdom and receive personal one-on-one guidance by working with me virtually? If you're sick of drowning in frustration and overwhelm and ready to flow through your divorce and co-parenting challenges, then go to my website and book a call with me. That's deprima.com, DEPRIMA law.com. Or you can find me on Facebook at Deprima Law. Talk to you soon. Some of you have questions about your partnership, marriage, or co-parenting situation. I'm here for you. Give me a call in today's live episode by dialing the U.S. number 1-760-456-7277. That's 1-760-456-7277. Talk to you soon. All right, we're back. Thank you. And today I am sharing with you some lawyer secrets, I guess, or some things that us lawyers know and maybe don't want you to know, or maybe we do want you to know, but important points anyway, from the perspective of a lawyer, things that will help you in your representation and things that you can do to save yourself some money as well. So, I think I mentioned, let's see, like 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 things before the break. We're continuing on in this list. It's not really in any particular order. So if you're just coming on now, you're going to want to probably go back and listen to those other ones because it's all very important. So, all right, moving on. Google's great, right? Like you can Google up anything you want. You can Google up divorce law in your state and you can find out all of the quote unquote law and the basics and the advanced pieces and important cases and formulas that are used to look at support numbers for child support and maintenance. I mean, I get it. And you know what? I do the same thing, not when it comes to legal services, obviously, but hey, I'm a consumer too. And when I'm sick or I've got something going on or I want to buy a new product, yeah, I will Google it first and find out everything I can about the issue or the product. So I'm not offended when clients go ahead and Google the law or important points. In fact, I think it's good. I think it means that you're wise. You're a smart consumer. But one thing that your lawyer knows and may or may not tell you, and that I'm going to tell you is even though we've got Google and it's this great tool, please still listen to your lawyer. Okay, that's why we're here. That's why we went to school. We didn't just, I don't know, just go to college, pop out and say, well, we're going to be a lawyer now. No, there's a lot of hard work, a lot of studying, a lot of things that go into it, a lot of things that you can't get just on a simple Google search. So, although I think it's great for you to educate yourself, and I think most lawyers would agree that it's okay to educate yourself, the trouble comes when you are arguing what you found on Facebook, on Google, or wherever you found it on the internet, or whatever your friend told you, or your grandmother or somebody, right? You're arguing whatever you heard or whatever you read against what your lawyer's advice is. That's not a good look. That's not a good scene. And, maybe you're right and you unfortunately didn't vet your lawyer very well and you have a bad lawyer. Maybe you're right. But for the most part, I would say if you're sticking with your lawyer and you've hired your lawyer, then it just means that you also need to listen to your lawyer. Don't think that your Google search is the equivalent of a law degree. It's not. It can be helpful for background information, but what's missing are the little nuances, how things are actually done in your area, in front of your judges, with the lawyers that your lawyer is practicing with every day. I mean, I can't tell you what a world of difference all of that makes. In fact, as an example, It's one reason why, I mean, I'm admitted in the state of New York. I can practice law anywhere in the state of New York, but I don't. People do call me from all over, but I don't take the case. I like to practice with the people and the players and the systems that I know. And even when people do call me from a little bit of a distance here in New York, maybe a little far out county or something, or even downstate, I will refer them to a lawyer in their area for the same exact reason. So that's why go ahead, do the research, but still don't argue with the advice that your lawyer is giving you. Your lawyer is on your side. At least they should be. That's why you hired them. And if you are mistrusting your lawyer's advice, then, and this moves on to the next point, it's time to find a new lawyer. So here's something else that you might not know, and your lawyer is probably not going to tell you, is that you have the right to terminate services at any time. Even though you've signed a retainer agreement, you still have the right to terminate services. So, if at any time you are not happy with the representation that you are receiving, maybe there's just been a breakdown in your relationship with your lawyer. You're just not seeing eye to eye anymore, or you don't trust your lawyer's judgment, or all those promises that your lawyer made you in that consultation just aren't coming true, or whatever the case may be. Your lawyer doesn't return phone calls. I mean, I've heard all of the stories. So whatever the situation is for you, know that you don't have to stay with that lawyer. It's a choice. So you can absolutely change lawyers at any point in time in the case. You can absolutely fire your lawyer and get new counsel. And under most circumstances, the court's going to be obligated to give you at least a little bit of time to do that without prejudice. So the other side of that coin is make sure if you're going to fire your lawyer that you really, really, really have a good reason, because it is extremely difficult to come into a case that's been pending for a long time, maybe even on the verge of a trial, after months have gone by and a lot of legal paperwork and a lot of phone conferences or settlement conferences and court appearance. It's very difficult to come in as a new attorney, late to the party, so to speak, and be able to really reach a good resolution. It's just more difficult because things can't be undone. That's what I tell people all the time. Unfortunately, I can't go back and undo the harm that's been done. All I can do now is try to come in and get you back on track and get you where you want to be. So if you are going to fire your lawyer, make sure that it's with a good reason, because that there's that flip side to that risk and that change in attorney that could hurt you. But it depends. So you'll have to weigh that out. Talking about just Google and sort of like Google law stuff. I know there's this new trend out there these days also where I think you pay a certain sum of money. It depends on the service you're using. You go through and you answer a bunch of questions, like some kind of a computer program, and they'll spit out some sort of an agreement for you and say that you're divorced. I want to caution you on that. I understand everybody wants to save money and not involve lawyers. Usually when you're thinking along those lines, it's because you're thinking about the horror stories. Not all lawyers, like I said, practice that way. It's up to you to find the right one. But I want to caution you on using just those internet services because, again, I don't know how well those different services know the nuances that are particular to your area. So I would suggest this, that even if you are going to use one of those services, still go and find a lawyer in your area. Again, probably one that is mediation friendly to, at the very, very, very least, review whatever you get from those services. Make sure that it complies with whatever your local court is going to be expecting to receive in order to sign that judgment of divorce. It's so important because, again, Google can only get you so far. These other apps or whatever they are, these kind of like anonymous, generic, all for one divorce, flat fee stuff, I think they can only get you so far. Since you're talking about your life and your future and your family's future, it's worth the money to at least have it reviewed by a lawyer. So please do that. And here's something else that I think a lot of lawyers may not tell you. And I think that there's varying opinions on this question. Whether or not you should be talking to your spouse while you're in the process of divorce. Well, again, I think it depends on who you're working with. And it depends on where you're at in the case. Some lawyers will automatically tell you, no, 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 absolutely not, never. Well, one reason why they might be telling you, no, 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 absolutely not, never, is because if you talk to your spouse, you might just be able to reach an agreement on some of the issues. And if you reach an agreement on some of those issues, well, now you don't need your attorney to resolve it for you. So again, that just goes back to who are you working with? Make sure you vetted them right. Bring this up in the consultation, okay? Because I think an attorney who's going to tell you no, 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 especially in the beginning, is going to be an attorney unless they have some other justifiable reason, right? I mean, if you're coming from an abusive relationship, then probably not a good idea for you to engage any conversation. Okay, so I'm just talking about kind of the normal, everyday kind of stuff without any other reason behind it. If your lawyer's answer is no, don't talk to your spouse, find out why. Because if they're saying it right out the gate, I'm more, to me, it's a little more of a red flag. I'm more leery as to what is the reason behind that. Well, I don't even know. I was going to suggest also here that if it's later on down the line and you're about to, go to litigation and they're saying no, it still could be for the same reason. I just think, find out what your lawyer's reason is for saying no, if they're saying no. Because I don't necessarily think that you talking to your spouse about the issues that are going on in the case is necessarily an unproductive thing. You can reach agreements. You can reach common ground. You can kind of sort through some of that emotional garbage that is in your way of thinking rationally and clearly. And, your lawyer may not know that or may not appreciate that. Or again, it's just looking at the other side of the coin thinking, well, crap, if you guys resolve it, then you don't need me anymore and I have to give you the retainer back. I mean, that's the reality. So find out what's going on behind your lawyer's opinion on that issue. Something else, when you go to your lawyer's office and you hire your lawyer, make sure that that's actually the lawyer that's going to be working with you and working on your file. And to what extent is that lawyer going to be working with you and working on your file? Because a lot of us work with other people. We have associate attorneys, we have paralegals, we have secretaries. So know who's working on your file and know, again, that you can change attorneys at any time. If you really hired a particular lawyer because you thought, well, you hired them, you liked them, you were sold on them working for you, and now you find out that it's a new associate who, just graduated law school and you're not getting the attention and the services that you require, then it's time to change attorneys, right? Let's see, something else. I know I keep saying something else because I don't know what number I'm on anymore, but uncontested. Uncontested divorces, people come in a lot and they'll say, oh, I have an uncontested divorce. Uncontested really truly means that you've settled every single issue that there is to settle. It doesn't mean that, just some of the big stuff has been resolved. It means you've really settled everything between you and your spouse and you just need it in a written form. And even going from what we settled to now putting it in writing, that's a huge leap. So be careful when you're presenting your case as an uncontested, settled case. Make sure that when you're saying that to your lawyer, you actually know what you're saying and that it does mean that everything is worked out to every last little detail and, it's in an agreement form, okay? Because otherwise you're going to be very much surprised when you get that legal bill that went way overboard because, the case is not, quote unquote, uncontested. And really this goes hand in hand, I think, with those services you can find online. They are representing themselves as the way to go if it's an uncontested matter. But again, it's got to be fully uncontested. super important when you're going through this that your lawyer might not tell you, again, because if they don't tell you, then there's likely to be more drama, more legal fees, is that divorce and a divorce judge, it's not a criminal court, okay? So the whole idea of wanting to get your spouse back, taking retribution and righting those wrongs, I know I mentioned this earlier on in the hour, but that is really the wrong position to have right out the gate, because you are going to end up sitting in court for probably, 3, 4, 5 times as long as what you would be otherwise. You'll be spinning your wheels. You'll be irritating the judge. You're just going to be going nowhere. So although, for example, in New York, property is equitably distributed, not equally distributed, meaning that it's all based on equity, a measure of fairness, and the judge has a lot of discretion. The judge does not want to hear about how your spouse took out $30,000 10 years ago, God knows where the money went, and how it was spent, and now you demand an accounting, or now you demand to be made whole, and you want the money back and the whole 15. And by the way, this happened again, or it happened the first time when we first got married. I'm just kind of trying to roll with it right now, but I hope you get the idea. The court will only go back so far. They're not going to look at your case and your situation as their opportunity to undo or correct the decisions in the agreements, whether they were implicit or explicit agreements. They're not going to go back and undo what you did. So if you married somebody and you paid off all their debt as soon as you got married, that was your choice. You did that at the time. Don't expect a judge to undo it. Okay? If during that course of the marriage, your spouse had a spending habit and, you were getting Amazon boxes to your house every single day by the truckload or whatever the case may be, and there's nothing to account for anything, don't expect the judge to want to hear it, because you stayed, you were there, you were married. Okay. They're not going to go back and right these wrongs. And trying to get through divorce in that way is going to not move you very far along in your life in terms of happiness and peace and resolution. So, judges are interested in what happened, a year before, maybe go back 3 years, but that's even getting increasingly difficult here to even go back that far. So keep that in mind. Okay. You might be right, and it might be something that the court should consider, especially if you figure, this is all about equity and it should be fairness. So, this is an equitable argument. But decisions are not made just on the law. Judges are human beings. Lawyers are human beings. We're all human beings. And there's a heck of a lot more that goes into these decisions than just the law. And this kind of goes back to the nuances that I've referenced a few times here. It could be anything. It could be just who's more believable, who's more likable, who has the better relationship, who's presenting their facts better. So it's not about whether you're right or wrong. You probably are right. And maybe you should get some of that money back that we just said, but you're not going to get it here. And so sometimes you've got to just cut your losses and move on and understand the difference here between the law and being right and reaching a resolution and being able to get more complete in your relationship so that you can move on and start the rest of your life. That should be more important. So think about that and how far back you are willing to go. And I hear this a lot too. On the flip side, just came to me. I want to address this. When you've got a mother, it's usually mothers that stayed home and kept themselves out of the workforce because there was this implicit or explicit agreement, whatever the case may be, that she wasn't going to work, the father, the husband was going to work, and the mother was going to stay home. Well, it's a natural consequence of that to think that there's going to take some time for her to now get back on her feet and go out and work and find a job and gain skills to do that. I mean, so consider the other party's position. Walk around in their shoes for a few minutes and consider what that's going to be like. Because it is unreasonable to say, well, okay, we agreed for you to stay home, so you've stayed home the last 5-6 years, and so now you should get nothing. I mean, there's going to need to be some supplement. The flip side of that is, do you necessarily, quote unquote, need whatever the statute may spit out as the correct number based upon incomes? And you may not, because, well, you may not. We'll leave it at that. So keep that in mind. You've made decisions while you were married. It's going to cost you way too much to try to go back and undo them. If your lawyer is super eager to present these arguments and bring these kinds of motions, then again, the first point I made, which was about being reasonable, maybe you didn't vet the right lawyer. Maybe you've got the kind of lawyer who revels in your unreasonableness, which if you're listening to this, that's not the right match for you. So that's kind of the roundup on that. Just some important points. I hope you find it helpful. If you listen and you do have questions, then please reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, Gina Marie DePrima. I've got the Divorce with Heart group. You can always communicate with me there. It's not private, so of course others will see what you post. But if you want to communicate in a private manner, you can do that through the Facebook Messenger, or you can send me an email. I do respond to emails. So if you have a question and you want to keep it anonymous, or you have a share, or maybe you've listened to this episode and you're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what's going on right now between me and my lawyer, and she nailed it, and how do I get out of it? What do I do? Let me know. Send me an email. We can talk privately. That's divorcewhart@deprimalaw.com. And if you go to the show page on Inflow Radio, I believe you'll see it there. So if you're listening and you're driving, just know that it's there. Okay. And reach out to me. We will be live next Monday. So, of course, taking your calls again. If you have something you want to share or a question, I'd love to hear from you. And if you like what I'm presenting here on this show, or if you have other ideas that you want me to explore further, let me know that as well. Or give me some examples of what you're experiencing in your life. And if you want it to be anonymous, just let me know. If you don't say that, then I won't know. And if you want to work with me one-on-one and go a little deeper in your healing, like I said, you don't want to be an emotional basket case. Sometimes it's hard to prevent that, but you don't want to stay there. You don't want to linger there. You don't want to have that happening, and you don't want to be using your lawyer to solve and help you feel better. It's going to cost you too much. Like I said, it's better if you have a counselor or you have a coach. And if you'd like to work with me deeper in resolving some of this heart pain and whatever is in your way of reaching settlement and resolving your divorce, or maybe you're already divorced and you're moved on, but you're having a lot of difficulty with co-parenting, or you're just still struggling to find yourself and feel strong again and feel confident again, and, feel like you're you and like you belong in your own skin, because let's face it, your whole life has changed. So if you're not there yet and you want to go deeper and work on some of these things, I do have 2 solutions, and there are different levels of individual attention, we'll say, for each one. But there's the conscious uncoupling. I've spoke about that before. And I've got group coaching for conscious uncoupling enrolling now. I'm looking to start a group here this fall. So that's a great way for you to begin to find the completion with your relationship that you might need, and to do it in a group. Or we can also work individually. And I have Divorce Intelligence, which is my program that's going to combine all of this practical, real world knowledge and solutions with a bit of the spirituality, mysticism, other elements that you wouldn't get elsewhere. So please don't let your emotions tear you down, ruin your world, keep you upset and crying daily. We can do something about it. We can get in there. We can clear the energy and the emotions. Just reach out to me. And thank you for listening. Thank you so much for joining me today. Come back next week and be sure to visit my website at dpremalaw.com to book a call, or let's connect on Facebook at dpremalaw, where you can join my group for more support. Please remember that the information shared is for general and entertainment purposes only, and that by calling in or messaging me, we are not creating an attorney-client relationship, and my advice is not intended to be legal advice. For specific legal advice, please contact a lawyer in your jurisdiction.
This show is brought to you by InflowRadio.com, the best curated talk radio network for personal development, wellness, spirituality, and conscious business.